What's up, YouTube? I'm Guy, and today on the JustBlueFish channel we are going to check out a pretty cool watch. We're going to take a look at the Hamilton Khaki Navy Scuba. It is Sunday, NFL football Sunday, and I'm obviously celebrating a miracle win by my Green Bay Packers. So yeah, it's in the evening now, and I figured I might as well try to throw together a review video. So what we're checking out again, Hamilton Khaki Navy Scuba. And the reference number, I got it written down here, it's a long one, is H64515133. The reason I picked this watch up a while ago was because I wanted to find a relatively affordable dive watch that was good quality and didn't have the name Seiko on it. I mean, we all know about all of the excellent Seiko dive watches that are available in the $200 to $500 price range. You know, the Seiko SKX, the Turtle, the Sumo, the newer Samurai model that just came out, and probably a whole host of other ones that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. So yeah, I mean, I've checked out most of them, either personally owning them or having had them on loan from viewers on the channel. And yeah, I wanted to try out something that didn't have Seiko's name on it. I figured there must be a pretty good alternative diver in or under the $500 price point. Now, I'm a big fan of the Hamilton watch brand in general. If you've seen my previous videos on the Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic 38mm, it is one of my favorite watches in my collection, without a doubt. So it was pretty logical for me to go over to the Hamilton brand and try out one of their Khaki Navy Scuba watches. So that's what we have here today. I'm going to hop over to the tabletop view, give you guys a look at that watch, and let you know what I think about it. Alright, so here we are checking out this Hamilton Khaki Navy Scuba. Again, it's reference number 645515133. Basic specifications and measurements on this watch. We have a case diameter of 41 millimeters, not including the crown and crown guards, with 20 millimeter lugs. We have a thickness that comes in between 14 and 15 millimeters, and why I say it's between is because it depends on where you measure it from. This crystal is a sapphire crystal with a slight dome to it. So if you measure from the very middle, I get 15 millimeters, but otherwise, more towards the edge, I get 14. And the lug-to-lug width from the top of the lugs to the bottom of the lugs, or the case's wingspan, comes in at about 50 millimeters on my caliper. Now, this is going to be the type of watch that somebody like myself, who's a big fan of the Hamilton Watch Company in general and a fan of field watches, is really probably going to like. I'm going to bring in my Hamilton Khaki Field 38mm side by side so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. You can see that we have this very field watch aesthetic. Obviously in the watch on the right it's a field watch, but on the watch on the left it's, you know, a diver with a dial that has a very much, you know, the Hamilton DNA built into it, and it has that presentation of kind of a field watch. Now, I had done a video in the past talking about the new Hamilton Khaki Navy Scuba that was introduced in 2017, I believe at or around the 2017 Bezel World Fair, and I had some complaints about the overall design and aesthetic of that watch. So I decided, you know, I'm going to go ahead and pick up this older version, I guess technically is what it is, and give that a try instead. You know, I wanted to find, again, affordable dive watch in this sub $500 price point that was, you know, good quality, and so I'm trying stuff out, and this is one that I settled on a couple months ago. So yeah, I wanted to show these side by side though, so that you can kind of see where this design comes from. It comes from these old, and this isn't an old watch, but this sort of historic field watch design, this aesthetic, this style. And yeah, I mean, it appeals to me quite a bit. I think if you're anything like me and you like these style of field watches, it's going to appeal to you as well. Now, we'll talk about the basic features and functions that come with this watch. I did forget to mention, I believe the weight of this watch, I went over the basic specs and measurements, but the weight comes in at 173 grams or 6.1 ounces on my scale, although it is minus a couple of links because it has been resized for my wrist. But yeah, that's the weight that I get. And of course, MSRP sticker price on this watch, $695. However, you can most certainly find this watch cheaper. I believe I paid around $425. At the time of this video's production, I was looking around online, and it seems to be that the supply is getting a little bit low, so it's not available everywhere that I used to see it, and the price has gone up, maybe between $450 and $500 now, but still quite a bit under that $695 price tag. Now this watch runs an ETA 2834-2 movement, which is more or less a day-date version of the 2824-2. Again, 2834-2 is what's inside of here. It's 24 joule movement, runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It has a power reserve of roughly 38 hours. It is, of course, hand winding and hacking, as I believe all ETA movements are. Again, it does have the day and date complication, and from the Hamilton website, they claim an accuracy or precision range of -10 to +15 seconds per day. This watch does have a screw-down crown. It has an exhibition case back, which we'll take a look at closer, but you can see the movement inside there. We do have a, again, slightly domed sapphire crystal, 100 meter water resistance, and the dial and the handset is loomed with luminescent or phosphorescent paint. So yeah, basically that's your general specifications and, basic features, I guess, for lack of a better word, for this watch. But yeah, overall, it is a really nice watch. It is a very good alternative for that sub $500 price point. Something to compete with the Seiko watches in that price point. I do like it. It's not without some shortcomings though, and I'll point all of those out along with the things that I do like about it as we discuss about some of the specifics. First thing I'll jump into on this watch is the case. Now, Hamilton does cases, and in particular the finishing on their cases, very well, in my opinion. This particular case is pretty much completely brushed, this entire watch for that matter. With the exception of the case back, you can see that's got a very high polished finish, and then a few spots on the bracelet. The center links, the edges, as you can see there, have a polished finish, and then the clasp, the edge of the clasp also has a polished finish here along this edge. With the exception of those few small parts though, and I guess technically the crown is a little bit polished, this entire thing is brushed. And in my experience, Hamilton's brushing is very, very good. Well above what you would probably expect for a watch in this price point, if I'm being completely honest. And I feel the same way about the other Hamilton watches that I've reviewed in the past, including my 38mm Khaki Field. I reviewed the Khaki King, which is kind of the day-date version of that. It looks very similar to this watch here, in my opinion. And again, that's a big appeal to me, that aesthetic. But yeah, all of those watches, including this one, have excellent brushed finishes. Hamilton does them very, very well. Now, probably the negative about this case is the size and weight. It is, despite the fact that it's only a 41mm diameter watch, being that it's pretty thick and being that it's pretty heavy, it does not wear big. It doesn't really present big. It just feels big on your wrist. It doesn't look a whole lot bigger than any other dive watch in this sort of size range, but when it's on your wrist, it feels bulky. That's not going to be much of a problem for most people, and honestly, it's not really much of a problem for me. But it was something that I noticed, and I figured I would point that out while we're talking about the overall, design and features, and specifically when we're talking about this case. Now, on the right-hand side of the case, of course, we have the crown, and we have these fairly pronounced crown guards. It's kind of reminiscent of the Khaki King in that regard. It had a very similar kind of a line or angles or proportions with these crown guards and then the crown. So obviously it's getting some of its design elements from that watch, or maybe vice versa. Maybe the Khaki King is getting some of its design elements from this watch. I don't know which came first, but regardless, that's another feature of this case. Now, when we talk about the crown, again, it does have a polished crown, and you can see there, if my camera focuses properly, it is signed with the Hamilton H. Couple of downsides about this crown. Number one, it's a little bit small and it's a little bit slick because it's not particularly textured aggressively, because it has that polished finish, and because of the size and its surroundings by these, somewhat large crown guards. Manipulating the crown is a little bit difficult. It's not bad. It's not like you can't do it, but unscrewing it, You know, it's a little bit difficult to get a grip on it. Once you get the crown out into the first position for hand winding, the movement is a little bit tight, is how I would describe it. So when you're hand winding it, you want to put, you know, 30 or 40 full rotations on the crown to get the power reserve fully wound up. It's, again, just a little bit difficult to manipulate. Once you pull it out to the first position to set the day and date, or the second position to hack the movement and set the time, you know, that's all perfectly fine. There's no problems there. But yeah, it's just getting it unscrewed, winding it, and then of course screwing it back down. It's just again a little bit snug, a little bit slick, and because of its size, just a little bit difficult to manipulate. Not a big deal. We can, you know, make do. But yeah, I thought I'd point that out. Next thing I want to talk about is the crystal. The crystal is, again, a slightly domed sapphire crystal. It's pretty nice. I mean, it's always nice to have a sapphire crystal. It's going to be very scratch resistant, you know, virtually scratch proof, I guess. In my experience, I've never scratched a sapphire crystal. I know it happens. I know people manage to do it, but you know, I'm relatively careful with my watches, and I've never done it. So, big thumbs up in that regard. But one minor complaint about all Hamilton watches, in my experience, is that the crystal is very reflective. And as we pan over towards my studio lights there, you can see major reflection there. But not only that, as we pan over towards, you know, the rest of my room here, you can see my video camera just, you know, perfectly in the crystal. You can see my fan up on the ceiling there. You know, as I pan around, maybe, yeah, you can kind of see me back there. So yeah, very reflective crystal. That is a major hit when we start talking about the legibility of this watch. It's not so bad that you can't read the watch. It's just, you know, depending on the angle that you catch it and your surroundings and the lighting that you're in, it can be a bit reflective. And that's a knock on basically every Hamilton watch that I've had experience with. I wish they did put anti-reflective coating on the underside of this on the underside of this sapphire crystal. I think that would be a huge upgrade. It would make these watches much better. And, you know, by and large, I'm a huge fan of Hamilton watches, but, you know, we can always hope for improvements, right? The domed portion of the crystal, that aspect of it, I mean, that's, you know, that's nice. It looks good, aesthetically pleasing, whatever you want to say. And it is very crystal clear. You know, once we catch it in the right light, like I'm kind of doing here, you can see it's almost invisible when you're not getting glare. But when you do catch glare, yeah, it just kind of hurts the legibility a little bit. Take a quick look at that exhibition case back. As you can see there, we see the Hamilton decorations on the rotor of that 2834-2 movement. And it's not particularly well decorated or anything, but you know, there it is, just in case you wanted to see it. The case back itself is a screw in. You can see there's individual screws there, and there's some notation: stainless steel, the designation for the movement, 2834-2, sapphire crystal, Swiss made, the reference number, water resistant 10 bar. Pretty straightforward stuff. Nothing, you know, out of the ordinary, really. Moving right along, though, let's talk about the bezel. Since we're at the crystal, we're at this, you know, portion of the watch. The bezel is only a 60-click unidirectional bezel, and it is very snug. It's got good texturing on the edge of the bezel, though, which does aid in rotating it. But as I hold it here, you'll see very snug. You can hear it's got a loud kind of snap to it. And again, it's only a 60 click, so you get 1 click per minute as opposed to 2 clicks per minute on a 120 click unidirectional bezel. But yeah, you have a solid black aluminum insert. The numbers and the graduations are all just painted on, you know, nothing really high quality as far as like engraved or etched into the bezel or anything like that, but it looks good, presents well, just you know, a little stiff to manipulate it. There is no loom on the 12 o'clock marker like you would generally find on the vast majority of dive watches in this price point. That's sort of a letdown, but you know, it is what it is. It's not a very big deal. The next thing that we're going to talk about on this Hamilton watch is the dial, which is, you know, of course, my favorite thing about it. It is very much a Hamilton khaki design. You can see there is a little bit of like a radial pattern on the outer. See if I can catch it in good light, not get too much glare for us here. That's the challenge with this watch. But yeah, we're getting basically this kind of radial pattern going around the outer ring where the main Arabic numbers are, the 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. and then a layer in the center, which is kind of domed above that, and then the outer chapter ring. I mean, the whole thing is very Hamilton. It looks fantastic. It's definitely my favorite part of this watch, and all Hamilton watches. Now we have, of course, the day complication at the 12 o'clock position and the date complication at the 3 o'clock position. We have these little highlights of red. You can see below the date there's a little triangle there, and then above and below the day at the top of the dial we have these other two little red triangles. I like that little accent on the dial. I think that looks great. It's very small, and if you don't have great eyesight, you probably would look right past it and not even really notice it, but it is there, and it's just a little hint of visual interest. Down below the date complication, we have the Swiss made next to that red triangle, the Hamilton branding, khaki automatic, and 330 feet there below that. On the inner ring, we have 24-hour Arabic numerals for, military time. Very standard for a field watch, and of course this is very much a field watch aesthetic, even though it's a dive watch. Very much in line with, the Hamilton brand and the khaki field line of watches. It's cool. I like it. I understand it's not going to be for everybody. There's probably going to be plenty of people that are going to say, yeah, this is not really a dive watch at all. It's kind of weird. It is kind of weird. It's kind of quirky. It's kind of funky, but I don't know. I think it's cool. Now, another kind of weird and funky thing is we have these oversized Arabic numerals for the 3 and the 9, and the other one's, all a uniformed size. That was one of the things that at first I didn't really like about it. I like things to be really symmetrical, and I guess technically it is because the oversized markers are on the 3 and 9 positions exactly on the left and the right. But yeah, it's a little bit weird, but it grew on me, and again, it's kind of a little bit funky. It's a little bit quirky, but I do like it. I think it's cool. Now, the markers for all of the Arabic numerals are applied, and they are applied stainless steel markers. Let's see if we get my camera here to focus nice and good. Downside to that, while it does look great when you're in bright light, when you're in very low light, it makes it difficult to read. It does definitely take away from the legibility depending on your lighting, but it's not a super big problem. Just something I think I should have pointed out for you guys. The handset is basically the exact same handset that you find on my 38mm khaki field. I love that handset. The very tip of the second hand, as you can see there, is highlighted in white. And then the hour and minute hands have these sort of, I don't know, almost syringe-like needle points towards the ends, and they're generously filmed with Loom. Now, speaking of the Loom, on the outer chapter ring, you can see there at the 45, the 50, the 55, up at the 12 o'clock position, we have these white pips. Those are Loom-filled pips, and I'll roll in some video of the Loom. This is another mild complaint about Hamilton watches in general. Their Loom is honestly not the best. It's not very bright, and it's certainly not long-lasting. If you're the type of person that says my watches have to have awesome, fantastic Loom, maybe this watch isn't for you. I don't honestly care about Loom on my watches. I rarely ever need to read the time in the dark. It just doesn't come up for me much. And when it does come up, I mean, I don't know, usually no matter what watch I'm wearing, it's not like it's so bright and visible that I can read it anyway. I got kind of bad eyesight. It's just, for me, it doesn't matter. So, that's the point I'm getting at. For you, maybe it's an issue. Keep that in mind. Hamilton watches generally don't have the best Loom. Most watches honestly don't have very good Loom, with the exception of, Seiko and some of the more higher end watches in the almost luxury price points, if I'm being honest, at least in my experience. So this is no different. The Loom here, it's kind of weak. Last thing to really go over on this watch is the bracelet. We'll go ahead and zoom the camera out a bit, and I'll talk briefly about the bracelet and wrap up this review. The bracelet on this Hamilton watch is quite nice, if I'm being honest. It's 20 millimeters with basically, that I can tell, no taper whatsoever. I believe it stays 20 millimeters the whole way. I didn't measure it down at the clasp end. Now, like I had pointed out, the center, well, first things first, the end links are solid end links, and they're decent. Decent solid end links. They're pretty typical. Nothing really to point out there. The links themselves, they're quite nice. They're very good. You do, again, have these polished edges on all of the edges of the center links, top, bottom, left, right. They're all very highly polished. It looks quite good. The edges or sides of the links, they're brushed just like the rest of the bracelet. And then, we have this Hamilton clasp. It's a pretty good clasp. It's a heavy duty clasp. The swing arm is a nice machined swing arm. Both of the blades are very well made, and then there's some polishing in the center there with the Hamilton branding. The clasp itself, nothing too special about it other than, it's not cheap stamped steel. Big negative here, only 2 micro adjustment holes. Yeah, I hate when they do that. Like, you can't drill an extra hole or 2 there. What would that take? 10 seconds? Like, it would make it so much better. But yeah, that's a, minor complaint for me with all watches that only have a couple of micro adjustment holes, because it's so difficult to get a nice, good fit when you're restricted by these little micro holes. But otherwise, yeah, it's a nice, decent, heavy-duty clasp. Looks handsome. You can see I got a little bit of wear on it from, wearing the watch. Nothing outrageous, but yeah, it's overall a pretty nice bracelet. It is extraordinarily difficult to resize, though. It uses a pin and collar system, and I actually have a tutorial on how to resize Seiko bracelets that use the pin and collar system. A Seiko pin and collar bracelet is 1,000 times easier to resize than this one. And the reason why is because the collar is the entire width of the center link. So on a Seiko, the collar is just a little tiny fraction. So it's easy to push the pin all the way through. But on this, yeah, it's the full width of the center link, and I'm pointing at where the collar is not there. Like, that's not where the pin is going through. The pin is technically going through here, right? But yeah, this entire center portion here, that whole width, you have this collar that you got to drive the pin through. Gigantic pain in the butt. I'm being honest with you. I tried to do it. I had a really tough time with it, and I had to take it over to a watch repair guy to go ahead and do it for me, and he charged me $10 or whatever. I wouldn't probably try to resize it myself, even if you're experienced at doing it. Maybe you're better at it than me and you won't have any problems. But I had a lot of problems, and I've resized a lot of bracelets. So, there's that. But yeah, overall, a few minor criticisms about this watch for sure, and it's not going to be a style or a design or aesthetic for, everybody, but I do like it a lot. I think that the minor criticisms outweigh the fact that it's a pretty good value. It's, again, around $400, maybe plus or minus, maybe $450, somewhere in that ballpark now. When I bought it, it was a little bit cheaper, but yeah, I mean, if you are a fan of Hamilton, if you like the field watch aesthetic, you really probably can't go wrong with this watch. It's, not a Seiko. Like, that's the thing that I want to say about it, I guess. I was, trying to find something other than Seiko that's a cool dive watch. And, this is a really cool dive watch. And again, I'm a big fan of Hamilton. Now, is it technically a dive watch? Somebody's going to mention this in the comments for sure. It's only 100-meter water resist. The bezel doesn't have a luminous pip up at the 12 o'clock marker. Yeah, I mean, it's not quote unquote a diver watch. It's not ISO certified, but I bet the vast majority of us that buy these watches never even take them swimming, let alone scuba diving. So, from that perspective, that's a non-issue for me. If it is an issue for you, yeah, this is not a full featured quote unquote diver's watch. So take this off of your list if that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking for a diver watch aesthetic, I think that you can't go wrong here. All right, well, that's basically everything I got to say about the Hamilton Khaki Field. The Hamilton Khaki Navy Scuba. Reference number again is H64515133. If you're interested in picking this up, I'll put links to it in the notes or the description of this video to Amazon through my affiliate link. So if you decide to pick one of these up, or anything for that matter on Amazon, by clicking my link, I get a small commission, which helps me out greatly. Definitely helps support the channel. If you want to support the channel by becoming a Patreon subscriber or supporter, that's awesome too. Definitely would appreciate it. Always hop over to my social media accounts and follow me over there. That would be cool as well. And if you're not a subscriber for some reason, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for future updates. Thanks a lot, and catch you on the next one. Bye now.